What up, perps? Kid Copious back in effect. Purple State Party, you know what we're doing here. We're up in America, the center, and common sense. And you know who doesn't use common sense? The extreme left, the neo-Marxists, man. They want to fix history while they're doomed to repeat it. So we're going to look at that. Let's get into it. Let's get this show popping. We're going to kick this show off with a little recap of how these neo-Marxists, the far left, operate. And unfortunately, they've kind of contaminated the entire Democratic Party at this point. But their playbook's quite simple. You blame white people for every ill of history. Then you offer absolution. That's kind of how the Catholic Church operated or operates still to this day. You know, they come up with something that's a sin, and then they offer you absolution. It's a classic manipulation. It works very well. You know, so if you're a white guy like myself, right? How do I get out of being this evil oppressor that I am? You know, you could join the LGBT community, but a lot of that isn't a choice. You're born that way. But there are loopholes. A white man is an oppressor, but a white non-binary is the oppressed. So just start claiming that you're non-binary, and then boom, you know, you're good again. You know, the sins of the past have been washed away. You could burn down cities and act like the resistance, Antifa. What a fucking joke that is. You could send money and give votes, and, you know, they'll give you your certificate of being absolved of slavery. But the truth of the matter is 99% of white people have nothing to feel guilty about. We're responsible for our own actions, not what our ancestors did. You know, we could feel bad for what our ancestors did. We could say, wow, that was a pretty fucked up idea. But it's not on us to take on that guilt. We didn't do that. We wouldn't do that. We abhor those actions. But on the subject of white people, what's with mayonnaise? You know, if you're Welsh, Italian, Armenian, you're white. I mean, those are three pretty distinct cultures right there. But they're all grouped in as white, right? They're all... I really don't know how they group these. I understand Welsh and Italian being part of Europe. I'm not exactly sure how Armenia gets in there, but that's what they're classified as. Your ancestors are to blame for slavery. But let's look at it a different way. Are the Pakistanis responsible for Pearl Harbor? I mean, it's the same continent, the continent of Asia, right? I mean, are Koreans responsible for the attack on the Marine base at Quezon during the Vietnam War? I mean, it's the same ethnic checkbox. No, you're not. They only lump everybody together where it's convenient. And, you know, right now, it's very easy to convince, especially young white people, that they are supposed to feel guilt. And therefore, because they feel guilt, they must be absolved so that they no longer feel guilty. Remember, we are not to blame for what people did in the past. What my father did, my grandfather did. And keep in mind, I'm only the second generation here. So I'm pretty sure my ancestors were not involved in the trade of slaves. But who is to blame for slavery? The people who collected the slaves, the people who transported the slaves, the people who bought the slaves, the people who are dead. The people that we are to blame are dead. And this isn't about, you know, I don't like the way they group everything together. So somehow reparations, slavery, racism, it's all grouped together. And I don't buy into that. But this is not about results from racism. Like, there was a black family, right, in LA, and they owned that beach resort, and the city used eminent domain to seize the property. And then Gavin Newsom gave it back. And I agreed on this show. I applauded him for that. Because the people who did it, the people who suffered from it, are still alive and were directly affected by that. And I applaud those kinds of actions. But not just for one group. And not for valid reasons. That's one of the reasons why, you know, certain groups I don't think deserve, you know, reparations for past wrongs because some things were legitimate. Just because the city did something and that family happened to be of an ethnic group doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. But where it was wrong, where the tinge of racism can be shown, I'm all for it. But ain't none of us responsible for slavery. And if they win, let's just say, if these neo-Marxists get their way, cities, states, the country will be paying out billions in reparations, billions in social welfare. Freelance work, your side hustle, that'll disappear because you see what they're doing already, like in Minneapolis with Uber, and they did it here in California. They're gonna start pressuring companies into making everybody employees that they can control. Franchisees will disappear. We're seeing that in California, where California wants to act like all of McDonald's are owned by McDonald's, not franchisees. You know, they make the rule, oh, you got to have 60 restaurants. Well, all that's going to do is, as we've seen, cost jobs. They're also going to cause pay to go up across the board. You know, just because you don't own a McDonald's doesn't mean you're not going to be affected by this. You're going to have to compete with McDonald's to get a burger cook at your mom and pop restaurant. But after they win, most people will barely be making a living. And corporations will absolutely dominate. Corporations who own leaders and can get certain legislation through. And that'll just lead to work rights dissolving. Workers will be exploited beyond belief under the new system. And under the new system, more and more criminals will roam unchecked. Drug use and all of its side effects will cascade across the cities like a tidal wave. Illegal immigration will soar, as well as the problems that all of this brings. And it'll take coin. So taxes, they're going to be unsustainable. Debt will soar, and people who supported these politicians will be disenchanted and disarmed. Because remember, the First Amendment is the first to go. The Second Amendment is the second to go. Under this new regime, this miraculous utopia that the neo-Marxists hope. And why? Why is it going to be so much doom and gloom? Because there's only two classes under their system. Rich people and the people who clean their toilets. So, I mean, if you're supporting these left-wing nut jobs, and there's way too many to list right now, I hope you're a rich person, because if not, you're just a disposable pawn of the elite. Those people out protesting, those people throwing tomato soup on artwork, you better hope you get a good job. You better hope that your ridiculous college degree is going to get you somewhere in life. Because if not, you are going to be working literally paycheck to paycheck. You are not going to have any money. They don't want you mingling in their society. One of the reasons they want to get rid of the middle class is because the middle class can mingle with the elites. They can go to the same places. They can afford the same cars. They can afford to live in their neighborhoods. Just barely, but they can afford it. And that's what they want to get rid of. And that's what we're seeing in California, where they just want, the rich, the people who clean the toilets, and the people who get public assistance. Because once you're on public assistance, you're going to continue to vote for these people because they're the ones signing your checks. And even more disgusting about these far lefties, as the Blaze brings up here, officials stand silent as brown shirt tactics make a campus comeback. Starts off by saying these left-wing students and their allies are today's brown shirts. Brown shirts were the people who harassed people during Hitler's reign. That's because they're not merely silencing speech by preventing people from taking the podium. They're exterminating ideas wholesale by threatening and harming people who merely want to listen to others speak. This is tyrannical conduct, pure and simple, and it must be treated as such. And instead of treating it as, a hate crime, which it is oftentimes, college officials play along. They agitate it. They support it. For example, students stormed into the University of Michigan President Santa Ono office because a Jewish American sought to deliver a pro-Israel talk shortly after the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Where's the harm in that? If your ideas are so good, why can't you listen to the opposition? And what is this person in opposition to? You say you're pro-Palestine, he's not allowed to be pro-Israel? And here's the script right here. A student group announces that they will hold an event on campus. Left-wing students and their allies launch online and in-person harassment campaigns in the lead up to the event. And even though the event was made known weeks, if not months earlier, the security presence is inadequate. Left-wing students and their allies, using mob tactics, managed to disrupt the event, force it to end early, or prevent it from happening at all. If your ideas are so good, why can't the opposition speak? Because your ideas suck. That's why. Your ideas suck. And the only way to get people to believe in your bullshit malarkey is to make sure nobody can point out that your ideas suck. The left excels at spin and manipulation. Consider that these radicals in the quad are supposed snowflakes, deeply triggered by even the slightest offense. These are the same young people who require emotional support animals, crayons, and freshly baked cookies to deal with the trauma of, for example, a Republican being elected democratically. Yeah, it is kind of weird. Of course, it's not just any students. It's mostly students who are politically conservative, Christian, Jewish, pro-Western civilization, and or pro-Israel. Because for some, I don't know why reason, the neo-Marxists, the far left, they love the Muslims, who are really directly opposed, more so than any of the groups that they seem to hate. Israel supports the pro-Palestinian people more than the Palestinians themselves. That's the truth of the matter. And as part of this, they think they have the First Amendment right to do this. But, as is pointed out in this article, the heckler's veto does not qualify as protected free speech. They are violating the law by not allowing people to exercise their First Amendment right. But the college campuses don't treat it that way. Because the college campuses are run by people who also want to destroy America. There's a reason why the First Amendment is first. Because that is the fundamental belief on which all the other beliefs come from. Our society will die if we do not have meaningful discord in this country. They do nothing. And perhaps it's time for the states, the cities, to get involved. One of the ideas that they propose here is that they can enact a confiscatory tax on the endowment of offending institutions and redistribute the proceeds to colleges and universities that protect the constitutional right of students. If a Jewish kid wants to go up and deliver a pro-Israel speech, and a group of left-wingers shuts that down and stifles it through violence and intimidation, that is Nazi behavior, and universities need to stomp this out. It is ridiculous that they are allowing one side to speak and then one side to not speak, silencing people who have religious beliefs, silencing women. We're going to see a little more of that later. So let's get to some specifics here. Here you go. Here's a Berkeley City Council. An 89-year-old Holocaust survivor was shouted down by pro-Palestinian protesters. What gives them the fucking right to do that? When she went in front of the council to pass a resolution in support of the Holocaust Remembrance Day, people called her a liar. People called her a lot of other names that I'm not going to repeat here. Those are hate crimes, folks. Because that's what they are about. And the other thing they're about seems to be leading to this next story here. U.S. measles cases surpassed 2023 total in first 3 months of this year, CDC says. Why? Quite simple. We have let in 36 states worth of people virtually unchecked. Unchecked. Unvaccinated. Coming into a country where we have a lot of people who are unvaccinated because of their political beliefs or religious beliefs. But the most telling thing about this is that the doctor for the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases at the CDC said, yeah, the rise in cases should alert us rather than alarm us. Okay. This is the same CDC that did all that COVID BS? Because this, again, is covering up the truth of the matter. We're not simply letting in a bunch of hardworking folks from around the world who want to come here and work, and they're perfectly fine to enter the country. The doors are open and people are just coming in. Okay, this whole thing about ankle bracelets and cell phones and hearings down the line and all of that is all just a cover up from the fact that basically anybody's walking across the border and we're not checking them. Yeah, we catch some bad guys down there. But what do you think that ratio is? One bad guy for how many get slipped through? Same thing with measles. And I don't care if 8 million people immigrate here. But after background checks, health screenings. But instead of going through a process, paying lawyers and assorted fees, people are now just walking in and collecting subsidies. So the immigrants who came here properly are just being shit upon now? Well, we could count on your vote, but guess what? Fuck you. One of my goals is to remind people of the story that happens after the story. Because that's the part that the media often leaves out, especially when it doesn't fit the narrative. We've seen that before, where they want to hush up certain details. Newsom legislatures opt for gimmicks and wishful thinking to close California's budget deficit. And the deficit is born of Newsom's 2022 declaration that the state was enjoying a $9.5 billion surplus. Right? Well, the surplus never materialized. It was an illusion stemming from an overly enthusiastic response to tens of billions of one-time dollars pumped into the state's economy by federal pandemic relief programs. The bubble quickly burst, but the politicians had already spent many of the phantom dollars. That's why we're not seeing things like in Oakland, cars getting cleaned up. In Los Angeles, roads are just full of potholes. Because that surplus never existed. That's why we're broke right now, because our rainy day fund is not as big as he would let us to believe. But these are the kind of things that people don't really want known. They want to continue to say, Newsom had a $97.5 billion surplus. Look how great he is. But no, he didn't. No, he didn't. And what is that? How are we going to fix these problems now? Now that they've wasted all the money on bad homelessness projects, the train, and countless other places where California has just blown money in pursuit of an agenda. California's capital city is being devoured by homelessness crisis, costing taxpayers millions. This comes from the New York Sun. The increased spending comes as Sacramento County has an estimated 9,278 homeless people on any given night, a 67% increase. Sacramento has taxpayers bore the brunt of $57 million in spending, a more than five-fold increase since 2015. Man, that's a lot of money going into a problem that's only getting worse. You're not even stemming the flow. And this comes from this wacky ruling. In 2018, Martin Voice versus Boise ruled that the lack of available shelter beds meant being homeless is involuntary, and thus arresting homeless people sleeping or camping in public is cruel and unusual. Well, some of these people made themselves homeless through their drugs or mental health not being taken care of properly and burned out all their family members. Okay, I've seen that more than once. All right. Some of these people are simply living off the grid in RVs up to no good. And as soon as the heat's on, they just move to a different city up and down the coast. I'm sure there's lots of people out there who are moving from San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and just keep going back and forth. We have people moving into the state to take advantage of this type of ruling. The thing about it is the homeless people that we're worried about, okay, are committing other crimes. There are other reasons to arrest them. Something has to be done. And the first thing is we got to get rid of that case. We have got to. Another little tactic that the left is using right now, and I say that because this is in California. This is probably true of more than just California, but I just happen to know this happens in California. California Attorney General defends naming of transgender-focused ballot measure. So this isn't about whether you agree or disagree. This is about the mechanism that the government is using. So they have the Protect Kids California is collecting signatures for what it calls Protect Kids of California Act of 2024. It would require to notify parents if children request to be treated as a different gender. I don't really agree with that. Block transgender females from participating in sports. I do believe in that for the most part. And mandate that students participate in activities and use school facilities consistent with their birth genders. Sort of agree with that. I don't know if I would support this. I'm not 100% sure on that. But Protect Kids of California. It's being renamed to Restricts Rights of Transgender Youth Initiative. So protecting children, no. Restricting rights. It changes what people see when they go to vote for it. And one of those places where it could be seen, we're going back to 2018. I'm starting to think 2018 was when the wheels started to come off the bus here in California. We were presented with the repeal of the gas tax. Okay? It was an additional gas tax that had been added in California, and it was going to be put to a vote. So Becerra, who was the U.S. Secretary of whatever, the Attorney General at the time, changed it from repeal the gas tax to eliminate recently enacted road repair and transportation funding by repealing revenues dedicated for those purposes. Requires any measure to enact certain vehicle fuel taxes and vehicle fees by submitted to and approved by the electorate. It's a pretty long frickin' name. But you notice how it says eliminates road repair. We should have the best roads in the country, and yet we don't. With all the taxes we pay. Polling found that there was strong support for this proposition before the wording, but strong opposition after the wording. The San Francisco Chronicle, two of their columnists, claimed the wording was to blame for the flip in public sentiment. Change the name. There you go. That's another great tactic. Lie to people. It was repeal the gas tax. That's what it was. California pays so much in tax on every gallon of gasoline. I don't know how they're going to recoup all that once they switch us all to electricity. It ain't going to be fun, though. And speaking of switching to electricity, look, I'm all for solar and wind where it makes sense, okay? But an onslaught of hail in southeast Texas destroyed large portions of a massive solar farm. So now you got broken panels all over the place, and now the residents are worried that there's highly toxic chemicals that are potentially leaking into the water table. So you're going to pollute the water to clean the air. I mean, it is a bit concerning. It's something like 2,500 panels. But it's not about opposing green energy. It's opposing the way they're going about it. Everything I see about the green agenda right now is that a 30-year plan has been condensed into 3 years. They're not allowing things to mature naturally. They're forcing the issue. I mean, right now in Seattle, they're talking about turning off natural gas. You know what happens when you turn off natural gas and you switch to more expensive electricity? Everybody loses money, except for maybe the power company. But again, this is the world that they're pushing for. Solar in Seattle. How's that going to work? We're going to see another example of it not working and just costing a lot of money. But it's not being done in a way that makes any sense. We're not using nuclear as a backup. What do they really think this is going to work? I was just talking about how that. Here we go. Okay, in the UK, they spent 113 million pounds on this tower. It's the one on the left there that kind of looks like a razor blade with the cover removed. The wind turbines can't be turned on for a ridiculous reason. This comes from the Express. Okay, so a promotional video for the building shows the turbines rotating with one of the developers saying, "We're sending a message that you can incorporate new technologies and we can reduce the carbon footprint. The 3 turbines are on and running." Well, in 2023, they revealed that the turbines had been shut off due to the excessive noise and vibration that permeated throughout the building. As soon as it came on, the residents were like, "What?" And so that led Labor Councilor Martin Seaton, okay? In the very early days on my first term, I received some complaints that residents were being disturbed by the blades spinning. It just doesn't work. It's a white elephant. The developers didn't take into account when the turbines spin, they vibrate throughout the building. It seems obvious to you and I, but the designers and planners are infinitely cleverer than us and miss the blinding obvious. I don't even know if they missed it. This is what I mean by just shoving 30 years into 3 years. That's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. They put wind turbines to power the building, but it's so noisy they can't turn them on. Hail takes out an entire solar plant. 2,500 panels destroyed by hail. Dude, we can't have our infrastructure. We saw what happened when a giant ship runs into a bridge, right? Okay? There, at least, the bridge was made as structurally sound as it could possibly be. But this stuff, man, solar panels, windmills, man, they are really at the mercy of Mother Nature. And Mother Nature's pissed off right now. I'm not going to get into why she's pissed off, but she's pissed off. Letitia James' legal strategy backfires as appellate court slashes Trump's bond payment by nearly 70%. Remember, we were hearing all that noise about she was going to seize his country club and all of that. Well, an appellate court slashed the bond payment by about 70%, knocking it down to $175 million, payable in 10 days from what would have been a combined $550 million that he was supposed to post. And this is all before the appeal. This is, the author says, legally, I don't understand why any defendant has to pay money in order to exercise their constitutional right of appeal. We could argue that. I don't get it. But the plan to go after Trump for things that lots of people do, lots of people lie, lots of people exaggerate the truth of the matter. But anyhow, it's blowing up in Biden's face. A clear majority, 56% of people, now believe that Mr. Biden is looking to win the 2024 election by jailing his opponent. 56%. Only 30% said no. Independents, a margin of 50% believe it. 33% say no. You think maybe, the people who support Joe Biden think that what they're doing is completely right. The problem is when we start setting these precedences, we don't know where they're going to lead. It's a slippery slope, and this is a slippery slope. This lawfare. But then Trump comes out and reminds us of, when he talks about drill baby drill and the ridiculous electric car mandates. where people are sick and tired of having Washington bureaucrats tell them what to buy or not buy, denying their freedom and consumer choice and trying to jam these regulatory decisions down our throats. And these are important issues. The crisis of affordability, where middle-class working folks can't afford the Biden economy because of huge gains in basic consumer goods, like groceries and gasoline, while they suffer declines in real wages, less hours, automation taking over. Trump says we're going to get our country back. That's what's going to happen on November 5th. Seal up the borders, and as I say, drill baby, drill will be drilling. Well, I don't even know. I can't even read. Come on, man. You don't come here for people who could read shit properly. Trump is at least acknowledging what our real concerns are. Energy costs. Being forced to drive an electric vehicle that we don't believe in. Criminals just running amok because there's no consequences. And let's not even talk about the border. White House disappointed after Israel canceled trip after UN ceasefire vote. Yeah, because the UN is telling them you have to have a humanitarian ceasefire. Is that like the ceasefire that Hamas broke? I mean, are we supposed to pretend that Hamas did nothing and that this is just Israel being assholes? Is that what we're supposed to believe? Well, I'm pretty sure that if I lived in Scotland, I'd be in trouble by now. Fortunately, I still live in America. And for the most part, we still have the freedom of speech. I don't use any of my arguments as a justification for hate like the left does. The left thinks that if you're pro-Palestine, stop the genocide. It's okay to hate Jewish people. I don't hate the average Democrat. I don't hate trans people. I don't hate any nationality or color. But at the same time, there have to be limits to how we go about these things. We all want to make sure we have a cleaner planet. But the way it's being done is wrong. I don't want to see trans females suffering, being murdered, being harassed for who they are. But at the same time, I don't want the women in the gym to feel uncomfortable, to feel threatened, to have opportunities taken away from them. It's all a matter of how people are going about things now. That's really pissing me off. So many of the issues. Before I leave, I just want to remind everybody I'm against what the Republicans did when they immediately started outlawing abortion. All right? I am as against that as I am against that women's soccer team in Australia allowing 5 biological males. But the thing about it is one, just so violates common sense and is part of a larger overall operation that really, frankly, terrifies me. I don't like the world under the far left. I do not think that's going to be a fun place to live. I don't want to live in a blue world. And I certainly don't want to live in a red world. I want to live in a purple world. I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party. And so are you. Love one another. Drink plenty of fluids. Don't be stupid. And it's raining outside right now. When them drops start hitting your head, dance it out. When the